friends, let's take a look at the 10 superfoods that fight cancer. But before I talk about them, have you ever wondered why cancer even happens? Now, if you can answer why, then you can take specific actions to prevent it. Now, if you think about it, cancer happens when DNA is damaged, and there's also a weakened immunity that lets these cancer cells grow. Supposedly, it's because we're living longer, and that's why we're getting more cancer. Seriously? Then how do you explain the rising rates of aggressive cancer in people under 50? How about Galapagos tortoises that live over 150 years old? And this guy, Jonathan, he's 193 years old and still walking. Most of us don't even get to half his age and be able to be upright. He literally carries a 100-pound backpack every day. So let's really think about what Jonathan eats. He's not chowing down burgers or protein bars. So why aren't we looking at Jonathan and his cousins to find the answers to cancer prevention? The answer has been in front of all of us. And the solution is to eat what they eat, all natural foods. But we all know not all natural foods are equal. Science now shows that there are superfoods that will do what 70% of the foods sold in the stores can't. Lower inflammation, repair your gut microbiome, and even slow and prevent cancer cells to grow. So number 1 is a black raspberry. I have yet to try a fresh black raspberry. I even flew to Washington this summer hoping to hit the black raspberry season, but no luck. I did, however, find a boatload of wild blackberries, and they're not the same.
Hi, friends. I'm in the state of Washington. And remember how I always advocate for people to eat berries? Well, if you are in the state of Washington, you know that blackberries grow everywhere. I've already picked some. Look at all these bushes. Ton of blackberries. You have to pick ones free of like any bushes. Like this totally is super ripe. So fragile and delicate. If you find yourself a little stick, then you use this stick to help you pick berries. And I'll show you how I do it. So if you find a place where there's just too many bushes, use this to gently push it down, and then you're exposed so many more berries, right? Once you push it down, you expose so many more berries.
Unlike the common blackberry, raspberries are unique, and they're just about impossible to find in the supermarkets. Yet studies from Ohio State University show that they contain special anthocyanins and ellagic acid that slow down cancer growth in the mouth, esophagus, stomach, and colon. Native Americans, they use black raspberries to treat stomach ailments, sores, and wounds. These were not used as candy. They were literally therapy. And today, cancer patients in clinical trials are using freeze-dried black raspberry powder to reduce precancerous lesions. Isn't it ironic that this superfood, a plant native to North America with wild bushes everywhere at one time, has yet to be heard of by the majority of Americans who now live in North America? And why is that? Maybe because 70% of our food, they're controlled by very few companies who want to give us cheap, ultra-processed, super tasty foods to maximize their profits. And this system is propped up by your taxpayer money because you subsidize certain farmers. So you are paying people twice to encourage large companies and small businesses to make and serve poor quality, cheap foods that may be mutating your DNA and weakening your immunity, putting you at risk for cancer. Now, the kicker is sometimes it's not even the food. It's preservatives, food coloring, and artificial flavors that are added to food. And 60% of cancers in the mouth, the pharynx, and the larynx, they're caused by tobacco and alcohol. But the good thing is that even people who choose to eat, drink, and smoke carcinogens benefit from eating fruit like black raspberries. Now, studies literally rubbed fruit extracts on the skin in the mouth, which is essentially what happens every time you eat food, right? But they didn't rub fruit ointment just once a day. They rubbed it 4 times a day. So hence, I eat fruit multiple times throughout the day. Now, even though I can't get fresh black raspberries, I'm thrilled that many of these precancerous studies were done with freeze-dried black raspberry powder, and I can order that stuff online. You may be wondering if it's okay to eat. Well, that's astronaut food, and you'll be surprised to learn that freeze-drying helps the food retain most of their nutrients. And this technology, again, was invented for astronauts to keep them healthy in space. However, our modern-day convenient foods are often laced with preservatives, microplastics, and artificial ingredients, and they're not giving us the nutrients and antitoxins that we need. Society, they tend to like food because they taste good, right? And it's not immediately deadly, so it's okay. Does that really sound like a good way to choose or pick ingredients in our food supply? And what's wrong with that? Too many people have been fooled by modern convenient foods designed for addiction, but it's ruining their health. And what do they say to themselves? I'll eat better next time. Unfortunately, for millions, the next time is after their cancer diagnosis. But it's really not their fault. We've been sold marketing slogans to find healthy foods, looking for high protein, low fat, keto, whole grain, etc. How can a product be labeled whole grain when their first ingredient is refined flour? Why do we have to look for chemicals and ingredients in food instead of looking for food? Then you have to worry about marketing gimmicks. Really, what is inside the food that may be permanently harming your DNA and your immunity? Because we all have heard about hidden toxins like arsenic in apple juice, microplastics in teas and sea salt. Then you have nutritional bars and shakes with chemicalized protein powders, and we think that we're gaming metabolism. We're so focused on the details that we lose sight on the big picture. Now, I know everyone wants to believe that they are healthy. Really? Protein powders are a $24 billion supplement industry. Jonathan doesn't eat protein powders. With so much protein powder, people should all look like Arnold Schwarzenegger, but they don't. And this is because they don't work out. You don't get muscles from drinking protein shakes. You gain muscle from exercising. But even Arnold has had several heart surgeries ever since the 1990s. And now he has a pacemaker. And unfortunately, he didn't realize that he should eat more like Jonathan until later in his life. But there is no vegan or non-vegan protein powder that's going to have the same effect as whole natural foods. And the good news is that 30% of the foods in the markets are still single ingredient whole natural foods. And many of these foods are full of protein. And amongst those are historically eaten foods by ancient cultures. I mean, seriously, why have we gotten so far from ancient wisdom and nature? Probably it's due to the boom of a pharmaceutical industry in the last 50 years that has catapulted and enabled the ability for food industry to promote crap. And they give us science education as a way to stay healthy. And unfortunately, when someone's selling you something and teaching you science at the same time, you get kind of suspicious, right? And the ads by the food industry and the pharmaceutical industry, they have blown up. And look what is happening to society. Notice that you're getting less product and wondering if the packaging is telling you the whole truth. And your medications, you're wondering if you're going to get side effects, right? And that's why, I believe in number 2, turmeric root, which is the most studied ancient spice in the world. I'm not telling people to go get curcumin. People traditionally have eaten the whole root. They're not eating curcumin. Curcumin has been purified from turmeric. Turmeric is known as Curcuma longa, which is native to South and Southeast Asia, especially India, and belongs to the ginger family. And the part that is eaten is the rhizome, the stuff that's underground. Archaeological evidence actually suggests that turmeric has been used for over 4,000 years. It's not just food, but it's used as medicine, as dye, and in rituals and traditions. In India's Ayurveda medical system, that actually dates back to 500 BC. Turmeric was considered to cool inflammation, cleanse blood, and it balances digestion. It was actually prescribed for respiratory conditions, liver disease, wound healing, and menstrual issues. But beyond medicine, turmeric was sacred. Brides were adorned with turmeric paste for fertility and purification. It was actually used to dye robes, symbolizing purity and prosperity. And this spice was so coveted that it traveled to China in 700 BC. And over there, the Chinese use it in traditional Chinese medicine as a blood mover and pain reliever. And then it spread down the Silk Road westward. And by the Middle Ages, it was known in the Middle East and Africa as both a spice and a textile dye. And in Arabic, turmeric was called curcum, which gave us the word curcumin. Scholars began to study turmeric. It's been described as a treatment for liver biliary disease. And traders, they still continue to carry it across the Indian Ocean. It embedded it in Africa and the Middle East. And by the 13th century, turmeric then reached Europe. Don't confuse it with saffron, just because they're both golden in color. It was sometimes called the Indian saffron. And during the colonial trade, the British East India Company, it popularized turmeric in Europe as a spice and a dye. And in the 20th century, that's when the scientists isolated curcumin, the yellow pigment, and began studying its antioxidant and anti-inflammatory properties. Now, modern research has validated many of turmeric's traditional uses. So let's bring some now modern science into the equation, right? Turmeric is anti-inflammation because it works in the NF-kappa B and COX-2 pathways. It's also an antioxidant that scavenges free radicals. And in cancer research specifically, curcumin is studied for apoptosis induction and to prevent angiogenesis. We have studies on brain health shown to boost BDNF in animals. And in the last 50 years, the supplement industry has turned turmeric into a global billion-dollar supplement. And they usually package it with black pepper, which has been shown to have negative health consequences. And this is what makes national news. So let me tell you a story about black pepper. Many of you know that I went to Loma University School of Medicine several decades ago. And when I went there, one day I was looking for pepper shakers, but there are no pepper shakers on campus. There are only salt shakers. And the reason is because Ellen G. White, one of the original founders of the Seventh-day Adventist Church, she was a health guru who believed that black pepper irritated the stomach lining and overstimulated appetite. And plus, they believed it could lead to irritability and excessive passion. I'm not Seventh-day Adventist, so if I'm interpreting it wrong, please let me know in the comments. However, I have a lot of Seventh-day Adventist friends, and I met one recently who told me that his grandparents were one of the original founders with Ellen White. Well, it turns out that Ellen White was onto something. It does actually irritate the liver. Now, black pepper has an ingredient called piperine that prevents your liver from detoxifying other medicines. And the reason why, if you just take curcumin, you don't get high levels is because the liver breaks it down quite rapidly. But once you put in some black pepper, that piperine stops the liver from doing its natural process, and that's to degrade curcumin. So imagine if you start megadosing curcumin with piperine, that you can have toxic concentrations of curcumin. And hence, that's why we're seeing the side effects. Side effects not new when you concentrate drugs. 1 out of 2 people will hear the words, "you have cancer" in their lifetime. And when that moment comes, there's a sense of powerlessness, right? That everything is out of your control. Maybe you're overwhelmed with emotions. And then you realize everything and anything you do could potentially make a difference. And I hope at that time, you will feel comfortable enough to reach out to your oncologist, a cancer specialist. And the point of this video is not anti-big pharma. Many of our modern day big pharma medicines are derived from ancient plants. Big pharma didn't invent them, but they figured out how to concentrate chemicals, just like they figured out how to pull out curcumin from turmeric. But what if you can rewind the clock and eat natural foods to prevent cancer? In less than 100 years, we have managed to convince all of society that what you eat doesn't really matter. Just eat anything. Just control your calories. Eat focusing on protein or fat and avoid all carbs. And millions have followed that advice, but are they any better? It doesn't take a rocket scientist to know that millions of people aren't on the right track. And even if you have the word doctor behind your influencer name, it's easy to pretend that you understand some food and nutrition because you just have to learn some key buzzwords like fasting, autophagy, lower blood sugar, burn fat. It sounds like you know what you're talking about. It's actually harder to pretend you're a neurosurgeon when you actually don't know how to be a neurosurgeon. So when people say we have more cancer because we live longer, I kind of disagree. Imagine if you had been eating the right foods because they've been sitting in your kitchen all along. And you may be surprised that our modern day arsenals of medicines, they actually didn't start till 1942, with nitrogen mustard gas that sickened and suppressed the bone marrow of a bunch of soldiers during the war. Now, it sounds really bad unless you have lymphoma. Now, long before our trillion-dollar big pharma industry, people used food as medicine. And black raspberries were healing and used by Native Americans. Turmeric was a golden root of India. And then you have tofu that sustained monks for centuries. And don't forget ginger that was used as a fire root to soothe the sick in China. But now modern science is proving that ancient healers already knew that these foods can help calm inflammation, strengthen immunity, and even slow the growth of cancer cells. Yet our food system It doesn't have these things. What does it have? Plastic sold tea bags and natural sticks that strip away any real food. Have you ever tried hospital food? Food doesn't taste like that, right? And this is really a hero's journey of the 10 forgotten foods, and we need to fight to bring them back, not just as a part of our meals, but as a part of our survival.
Hi, friends. I am so thrilled that you want to take charge of your health and take charge of your food. Now, I know nutrition can be complex, but it doesn't have to be. And I'm here to support you in this lifelong journey. So if you point your camera app to this QR code, it'll take you to a link for a free handout that I created just for you. And if you like it, if you want to see other handouts, please go to the link in my show notes, and then you can leave me your feedback on what I could do to help you in your journey. Okay, back to the video now.
And number 4 is no exception. It's broccoli sprout. Most people are only familiar with mature broccoli, but broccoli sprouts, 3-day-old baby greens, contain 50 to 100 times more sulforaphanes than the mature broccoli. Johns Hopkins researchers show that sulforaphane can turn phase 2 detoxification enzymes on to help eliminate carcinogens and even influence tumor suppressor genes. Now, the ancient Romans already prized Persilica vegetables. They ate wild mustard greens for strength, which is actually number 5. And today we are discovering that these cruciferous plants are powerful in how they protect our DNA in response to toxins. And we're not talking about a bag of chips. We're talking about seedlings that have carried chemistry and is able to rewire your wrists. Number 6 is actually a seed, black cumin, the seed of prophecy, Nigella stevia, which was used in the Middle East for centuries. And modern lab studies show thymoquinone, its active oil, induces cell death in breast, colon, and pancreatic cancer cells. But the problem is most people aren't eating this ancient spice. This isn't a novelty spice. This is a seed civilization once considered sacred, and now science has confirmed why. Now, number 7 is a different kind of seeds, whole beans, which are truly a humble protector. Beans seem ordinary, but they're used in the blue zones, including Okinawa. It is considered a staple food. Epidemiology shows bean eaters have dramatically lower cancer mortality. And unlike getting your nail, hair, or eyelashes done, beans actually are cheap, and they have resistant starch, fermentable fiber, and polyphenols that feed your gut bacteria to change your immunity. And then those bacteria produce butyrate, a short-chain fatty acid that calms inflammation, and it may even suppress colon cancer. Now, ancient Mesoamerica cultures even worship beans as a gift from the gods. And this isn't canned beans soaked in syrup and sugar. This is the humble protector that actually helped build civilizations. Number 8 is a whole grain called rye. I think it's a forgotten grain. Bread today is soft, white, stripped of nutrients, and potentially full of carcinogens like potassium bromate, which is actually banned in the European Union and many other countries. And this may be why when you eat bread in Europe, you don't feel the same. But ancient Scandinavians, they actually thrive on dark, dense rye bread. Now, rye contains lignans and araboxylans, fibers that modulate estrogen metabolism and reduce hormone-driven cancer risks. And a Finnish cohort study actually linked whole rye consumption to lower prostate and breast cancer. And remember, this isn't white bread wrapped in a plastic bag. This is actually a forgotten grain that carried Northern Europe through long winters, and it may help carry some of us towards cancer prevention. Now, number 9 is a purple sweet potato, the Okinawa secret. Sweet potatoes are, in America, comfort food, right? Laced with sugar and marshmallows. I don't understand why. Okinawa sweet potatoes made up 60% of the calories for centuries, and they didn't add sugar and marshmallows. They're not drowning it in fat. And the result? Okinawas had some of the lowest cancer rates and longest lifespan in the world. Now, the anthocyanins, they give the potatoes that purple hue, pigments that reduce oxidative stress and inflammation in cancer models. And so this isn't neon-colored processed snacks. This is a root that painted the diets of some of the world's longest living people. And number 10 is the dinosaur kale. This is my leafy guardian. Now, these kale trends are modern, but dinosaur kale, Tuscan kale, Cavolo Nero, it traces back to Roman times. Soldiers ate it before battle. Today, kale delivers glucosinolates, vitamin K, lutein, beta-carotene, sulforaphanes, and studies have linked higher kale and cruciferous intake to reduce lung, breast, and colon cancer risks. Remember, this isn't kale chips dusted in cheese powder. This is a leafy guardian that once marched with empires. And if you want to learn more about other superfoods, watch the next video.